Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever caught yourself saying, "I'm not good enough," or "I could never do that"? What if I told you those aren't just fleeting thoughts? They are bricks you're laying down on the path of your life. Whether you whisper them in frustration or shout them in fear, every word you speak is a blueprint. Your words are not just descriptions of your reality, they create it. When I was younger, I often heard people tell me what I could or couldn't be. And for a while I believed them until one day I realized those weren't my words, they weren't my truth. I had to rewrite the script. I began to speak differently about myself. I began to say I am capable, even when I didn't feel like it. I began to say I belong here, even when I walked into rooms that made me doubt it. And slowly those words started turning into actions. Those actions became habits, and those habits built a new reality. You see, when you say something often enough, your mind begins to believe it, and once your mind believes something, your body follows, your choices follow, your destiny follows. It's not magic, it's mindset. And it all begins with the words you choose to say, especially when no one else is listening. Let's be honest. Life throws curveballs. It challenges you, it tests you. But your power lies in how you speak to yourself in those moments. If you say, "I'll figure it out," you will. If you say, "This is who I am," then that's who you become, not because you're pretending, but because you're planting seeds, and the seeds you plant with your words will grow. They will grow, so if you keep telling yourself that you're stuck, you'll stay stuck. But if you start saying, "I'm evolving," suddenly the game changes. The world starts seeing you differently, because you start seeing yourself differently. And isn't that where every transformation begins, with a shift, not in what we have, but in what we say? Words are free, yes, but they're also priceless. They're the most powerful tool you own. Use them to lift, not limit. Use them to build, not break. Speak like the person you want to become, because eventually you'll look around and realize you already are. Your words become your reality. Choose them like your future depends on it. Because it does. The language we use shapes our beliefs and identity. This isn't just a philosophical idea. It's a psychological truth. Every sentence we speak, every label we attach to ourselves, becomes a thread in the fabric of who we are. The words we use daily, especially the ones we direct at ourselves, begin to mold our inner world. And eventually that inner world spills into the outer one. Think about it. From a young age, we are told who we are. Sometimes it's our parents, teachers, or even classmates. "You're so shy," they say, "you're always the responsible one," or "you're not very good at this." These phrases seem harmless on the surface, but they stick. We absorb them and internalize them, and without even realizing it, we start to live by those definitions. What was once an observation becomes an identity. The language we hear most often becomes the language we speak to ourselves. And the language we speak to ourselves becomes the lens through which we view the world and our place in it. If someone is told repeatedly that they are not enough, not smart enough, not capable enough, they will start to believe it. Not because it's true, but because repetition gives it power. Words don't just describe our reality, they start to define it. Now, this works both ways. Just as negative words can limit and confine us, empowering words can liberate and uplift us. When you begin to speak with intention, when you choose words that reinforce your potential instead of your fear, something shifts. You start seeing opportunities instead of obstacles. You begin to act in alignment with who you can be, not just who you've been told you are. The mind listens, it listens closely, and it doesn't often distinguish between truth and repetition. If you tell yourself every day, "I'm not good at public speaking," your brain will find ways to reinforce that belief. It will remind you of every moment you stumbled over your words, every time your voice shook, every awkward pause. But if you flip the script and start saying, "I'm improving my public speaking skills every day," your brain starts collecting new evidence. It shifts focus, and that shift is everything. Language is also deeply tied to identity because it influences the stories we tell about ourselves, and we are, at our core, storytellers. We narrate our lives in our heads. We tell ourselves what kind of person we are, what kind of life we live, what we can or cannot do. That inner narrative, formed and fueled by our words, becomes our truth, unless we choose to change it. Have you ever met someone who lights up a room, not because they are the loudest, but because they speak with clarity, purpose, and positivity? That's not an accident. That's self-awareness combined with conscious language. Those individuals have learned that the way they speak, especially about themselves, is not just communication, it's self-definition. They've trained their minds to be allies, not enemies. When we call ourselves by certain names, whether it's failure, mess, or asterisk, not enough, asterisk, we invite those identities to take up space in our minds. We wear them like badges, not realizing we have the power to take them off at any moment. But the opposite is also true. If you call yourself resilient, determined, capable, you begin to carry yourself differently. You rise to the standard your words have set. Even culturally, language plays a massive role in shaping our identity. The words we use in our native languages often have emotional depth that English translations can't always capture. They carry weight, they carry generations, and that emotional connection to language shows how deeply words are tied to who we are. Words also become rituals. The way you speak every morning sets the tone for your day. If the first thing you say when you look in the mirror is negative, that becomes your starting point. But if you speak to yourself with kindness and strength, you anchor yourself in a mindset that empowers you before the day even begins. This isn't about pretending things are perfect. It's about being deliberate, being conscious of the power you hold every time you open your mouth or form a thought. You get to decide what kind of identity you're reinforcing. You get to choose the words that will become the soundtrack of your life. The language we use is not background noise. It's the main narrative. It doesn't just tell people who we are. It tells us who we are. And over time, those stories take root. They influence our decisions, our relationships, our careers, and our capacity for joy. If you want to change your life, start by changing your words. Speak with intention. Choose the kind of vocabulary that matches the life you want to live and the person you want to become. Because your language doesn't just express your identity, it shapes it. Every word matters. Every sentence builds. And every time you speak, you're either reinforcing the old version of yourself or building the new one. Positive self-talk leads to powerful transformations written in the same style, grounded, empowering, and emotionally compelling. Positive self-talk leads to powerful transformations that may sound simple, even a bit cliché, but simplicity doesn't make something any less true. The way we speak to ourselves can either be the fuel that drives us forward or the weight that holds us down. And most of the time, we don't even realize the conversations we're having with ourselves. They happen quietly, in between the noise of life, like background music we've gotten used to, but that music plays on loop. And the more positive and empowering the soundtrack, the more strength we find in ourselves when we need it the most. Think about the last time you failed at something, a test, a job interview, a relationship, anything. What were the first words that ran through your mind? Were they compassionate, encouraging, or were they filled with criticism, blame, or shame? For most of us, self-talk in those moments becomes a harsh judgment. We say things to ourselves we'd never say to a friend. But imagine if instead the voice in your head said, "It's okay, you tried, you learned, you're growing." Imagine how different you would feel. Imagine how much more willing you'd be to try again. That's the power of positive self-talk. It doesn't deny reality, it redefines it. It doesn't ignore pain or failure. It gives you strength to face them. And when you start to consistently speak to yourself in a way that builds rather than breaks, that uplifts rather than undermines, something remarkable happens. Your life starts to change. Transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it does begin the moment you decide to become your own ally instead of your enemy. The moment you choose to cheer yourself on, even if your voice shakes. It begins the moment you stop waiting for someone else to validate you and start validating yourself. Positive self-talk is not about arrogance, it's about self-respect. It's about recognizing your worth even when the world doesn't. There are people who have climbed unimaginable mountains not because they had the best resources, but because they had an inner voice that said, "Keep going." That inner voice doesn't show up automatically, it's cultivated, it's shaped by repetition, and it becomes more powerful every time you choose to speak to yourself with purpose. Let's be clear, this isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's not about toxic positivity or ignoring your feelings. It's about balance, about choosing words that acknowledge your struggle while also honoring your strength. It's the difference between saying, "I'm so bad at this," and saying, "I'm still learning, but I'm getting better." Both might come from the same situation, but only one gives you the energy to keep moving forward. Words carry energy. When you say things like, "I can't," "I'm a failure," or "I'm not enough," you're draining your own power. You're cutting yourself off from growth. But when you say, "I will figure it out," or "This is hard, but I'm capable," you create momentum. You remind yourself of your ability to adapt, to overcome, and to evolve. Every person you admire, every success story you've heard, has included moments of doubt. But the common thread among those who rise is this: they learn to speak to themselves with belief, even when belief feels like a whisper. That whisper grows louder over time. It becomes a roar. It becomes a force. And it's not just emotional. It's neurological. Studies have shown that positive self-talk can reduce stress, improve performance, and boost resilience. Athletes use it, leaders use it, artists use it, because what you say to yourself directly affects how you perform, how you recover, and how you show up in the world. Your body listens, your brain listens, and they respond. If you wake up every day and say, "I can handle this," even if you're scared, your brain starts building that belief into your system. It starts finding evidence to support it. You stand taller. You speak with more confidence, you take more action. That's not coincidence. It's transformation. Of course, there will be days when the voice in your head gets dark, when the old patterns return. That's normal. But what matters is what you do next. Will you spiral, or will you interrupt the thought? Will you let that voice control the story, or will you take the pen back and rewrite it? Positive self-talk is not about never having bad days. It's about choosing not to stay stuck in them. So the next time you feel like giving up, listen to the voice inside, and if it's not saying what you need to hear, change the script. Speak like someone who deserves to win. Speak like someone who's already on their way, because you are, and the more you remind yourself of that, the more you'll start to believe it. And once belief takes root, transformation is no longer a question. It's inevitable. Repeating negative narratives can become self-fulfilling prophecies, written in the same emotionally grounded and inspiring tone as before. Repeating negative narratives can become self-fulfilling prophecies. It starts subtly. Oh, subtly, you don't even notice it. A thought slips in. "I always mess things up." You say it after a bad presentation, or a tough conversation, or a small mistake. And maybe you don't really believe it the first time. Maybe you even laugh it off. But then you say it again, and each time it carves a little deeper into your mind until it starts to feel like truth. Not because it is truth, but because you've repeated it so many times that it starts to sound like reality. The stories we tell ourselves, those internal monologues we run on loop, are incredibly powerful. They shape our perception. They influence our choices. They guide how we see the world, and more importantly, how we see ourselves in it. When you keep telling yourself something negative, you start acting in ways that align with that narrative. You start making decisions, even subconsciously, that support what you already believe. If you say, "I'm terrible at relationships," You might unconsciously pull away when someone gets close, sabotage moments of connection, or fail to communicate your needs. If you tell yourself, "I'm not leadership material," you might avoid raising your hand for opportunities, even when you're more than qualified. Not because someone told you no, but because you already did. That's the trap of negative narratives. They don't need anyone else's voice to hold you back. Your own voice is enough. It doesn't even take a dramatic moment to begin. Sometimes it's a small failure, a passing comment from someone else, or a moment of vulnerability that gets met with rejection. And suddenly, a seed is planted. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not lovable. Maybe I'm not made for this. And the more you repeat it, the more it grows. It becomes part of your identity. You start walking through life wearing it like armor. And the worst part, it begins to predict your future. This is how self-fulfilling prophecies are born. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll act like it. If you believe you're destined to fail, you won't try as hard. Or maybe you won't try at all, and when the failure comes, it won't surprise you. It will simply confirm the narrative you've been repeating. It becomes proof, even though the only thing it's really proving is that belief has power. But here's the truth you need to hear. Just because a thought feels familiar doesn't mean it's right. Just because a belief has been with you for years doesn't mean you have to keep carrying it. Negative narratives only have power if you keep feeding them. And you feed them every time you say them out loud, every time you think them without questioning, and every time you let them shape your choices. You can break the cycle, you can interrupt the pattern, but it starts with awareness. You have to catch the story before it becomes your script. You have to stop yourself mid-thought and say, wait, where did that come from? Who told me that? Is it actually true? Most of the time it's not. It's just fear dressed up as fact, and fear is loud, but it's not wise. There's something courageous about choosing to rewrite the story, about deciding that just because you've always believed something doesn't mean you have to keep believing it. That kind of courage creates space for change. When you stop repeating negative narratives, you make room for new ones that reflect who you really are, not who you were told to be. It's not about pretending your struggles didn't happen. It's not about ignoring your pain. It's about choosing not to let those experiences write your future. Maybe you failed before. Maybe you were heartbroken. Maybe you were overlooked. That's real. But it doesn't mean you are a failure. It doesn't mean you are unlovable. It doesn't mean you're invisible. That's just one chapter, not the whole story. Your words are your cues. If you say, "I always attract the wrong people," you're signaling your brain to focus on that pattern. But if you say, "I'm learning what I deserve," your brain starts to shift. It starts to look for people, places, and choices that reflect that belief. That's the power of intention. That's how a new story begins. It takes work. It takes time. But transformation always starts in the mind before it shows up in life. You have to believe differently before you live differently. And belief begins with the words you repeat, especially the ones no one else hears. So if you've been telling yourself a story that keeps you small, quiet, afraid, pause, look it in the face, ask where it came from, and then choose something better. Because the truth is, you are not your worst moment. You are not the lie you believed. You are not the voice that says you can't. You are the author. You always have been, and you can write something new. Intention behind words can direct the course of our actions, written with an emotionally engaging, empowering tone. Intention behind words can direct the course of our actions. Every time we speak, we're not just communicating information. We're sending signals to our hearts, minds, and bodies about what we value, what we desire, and what we believe. And the power of those words lies in the intention behind them. The energy you infuse into what you say is what will dictate how you act, how you respond to challenges, and how you show up in the world. Think about the difference between saying something out of habit versus saying it with purpose. When you say, I have to do this, it feels like an obligation, like something you're being forced into. You approach it with resistance, maybe even resentment. But when you say, I choose to do this, the energy shifts. Suddenly it feels empowering. You're no longer a victim of circumstances. You're the creator of your own actions. This is why intention is everything. It transforms a mundane task into a meaningful one. It turns a routine day into an opportunity. The words we speak carry the power to shape not only the way we perceive our actions, but also how those actions unfold in the world. Consider someone who is about to give a presentation. If they walk onto that stage with words like, I'm going to mess this up, their body will tighten, their voice will falter, and the audience will pick up on the nervous energy. But if they step onto that stage with the intention of I am here to share something valuable, or I'm confident in what I'm sharing, their posture changes, their voice steadies. They begin to connect with the audience. The energy they bring shifts the entire experience. That's the power of intention. Intention directs focus. It's the foundation of our actions. Every word you speak, whether to yourself or others, holds intention within it. And that intention tells your mind what to do next. Words without intention are like sails without wind, directionless and powerless. But words with intention have a force that propels you forward. They guide your choices, your behavior, and ultimately the outcome of your actions. When we speak with intention, we create clarity. We strip away uncertainty. Instead of saying, I'll try, we say, I will. Instead of saying, I hope, we say, I trust. Those little changes, those small adjustments in the energy of your words, speak volumes. They move mountains in the way we act, think, and respond to challenges. Think about the intentions behind your own words. When you speak to others, what is the energy you're bringing with you? Are you speaking with empathy, with understanding, with kindness, or are you speaking with frustration, impatience, or defensiveness? The intention behind your words not only influences the response of others, but also shapes how you connect with them. When you speak with a genuine desire to understand and uplift, your interactions become more meaningful. When your words come from a place of anger or fear, they often push people away or create barriers. Our words are a mirror to our inner selves. They reflect what we believe, how we feel, and what we want to achieve, but they also shape those things. When you speak with intention, you create alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions. You stop saying things just because they are expected or habitual, and instead, you start saying things that reflect your true desires and values. Your intentions become your compass, guiding you through each decision, each conversation, each challenge. One of the most important places where this is true is in how we speak to ourselves. Positive affirmations and self-talk are more than just feel-good mantras. When you say, I am worthy, or I have the power to change, your brain begins to wire itself around those beliefs. The intention behind those words is to uplift, to empower, and to transform. And as you speak them, your behavior shifts. You start making choices that align with your worth. You begin to set boundaries, take risks, and move forward with confidence because your words have affirmed your ability to do so. But the reverse is just as true. When we speak negatively about ourselves, even with just a passing thought, the intention behind those words, whether it's self, doubt, insecurity, or fear, directs our actions. If you say, I can't do this, your body doesn't take action. Your mind doesn't take steps forward. Your energy closes in on itself. But when you change that narrative and say, I can figure this out, even if you don't have all the answers, your intention shifts. And with that shift, your actions follow. You start researching, asking for help, problem solving. You create momentum simply by changing the intention behind your words. This is why words, though simple, are so incredibly powerful. They don't just reflect our intentions, they build them, and in doing so, they shape our realities. If you say, "I am going to succeed," the intention behind that belief will guide your actions towards success. The energy in those words directs your attention, resources, and effort toward your goal. But if you say, "This is too hard," your mind will start looking for evidence of failure. Your actions will become half-hearted, and your belief in your ability to succeed will dwindle. At the core of every action, thought, and decision is intention. It's the difference between being passive and active, between going through the motions and creating a life that is in alignment with who you truly want to be. Your words, when spoken with clarity and purpose, have the power to move you from where you are to where you want to be. They hold the power to transform not just your mind, but your reality. When you speak with intention, you are directing the course of your life with every word. It is a powerful tool in shaping your destiny. So choose your words wisely and use them to propel yourself toward the future you desire. The power of words in shaping relationships and connections, written with an empowering, emotionally engaging tone. The power of words in shaping relationships and connections is one of the most profound influences we have in our lives. We often underestimate the significance of our daily interactions, thinking that the tone, the choice of words, or the way we communicate with others doesn't matter as much as the big moments. But the truth is, it's not just the major conversations that build relationships. It's the little exchanges, the words we choose, and the energy we bring with us every single time we communicate. Those words, over time, create bonds. They form the foundation of trust, respect, and intimacy, or if used carelessly, they can create walls that distance us from others. When we speak, we're not just transmitting information. We're sending a message about who we are, what we value, and how we perceive the other person. The way we speak to someone shapes how they feel in our presence. It influences how they view themselves in relation to us. If we speak with kindness, empathy, and understanding, we open the door to deeper connection. But if we speak with criticism, judgment, or indifference, we close that door. And without realizing it, the words we use in our most casual interactions can either reinforce love and support or erode it over time. Think about the people in your life who have lifted you up, who have made you feel seen and heard. More often than not, they did so with their words. They didn't just tell you what you wanted to hear. They spoke with intention and care. They chose words that made you feel understood, valued, and appreciated. Whether it was a friend who reminded you of your worth during a tough time, a colleague who offered encouragement when you doubted yourself, or a partner who expressed love and gratitude in simple but profound ways, those words were building something. They were nurturing trust, respect, and a deeper connection between you and that person. On the flip side, think about the moments when words have caused pain, when they've left scars that linger long after the conversation has ended. Words have the power to wound. A harsh comment, an unkind criticism, a careless remark. These can stay with us, influencing how we see ourselves and how we relate to others. And sometimes we don't even realize the impact our words are having in the moment. We may be frustrated, tired, or distracted, and in those moments we say something that hurts someone else. But those words linger. They don't just vanish. They settle into the hearts of the people we care about, and if left unaddressed, they can create distance, misunderstanding, and resentment. The impact of our words is even more significant when it comes to our closest relationships. In our families, with our partners, and with our closest friends, the way we communicate can either strengthen the bond or create cracks that grow over time. When we communicate with honesty, patience, and empathy, we create space for vulnerability, connection, and trust. But when we communicate with defensiveness, blame, or disregard, we create walls. And over time, those walls can make us feel isolated, misunderstood, or disconnected. The power of words lies in their ability to shape the narrative of our relationships. If you constantly say, "I don't have time for you," or "you never listen to me," those words become the story of your relationship. They define the dynamic between you and the other person. But if you choose to say, "I value you," or "I'm here for you," you create a new story, a story of connection, support, and mutual respect. Those small words, repeated over time, shift the tone of the relationship. They change the way you both show up for each other. And as you both continue to speak with intention, the relationship deepens, grows, and flourishes. The power of words in relationships goes beyond just the spoken word. It extends to the way we speak to ourselves about others. The thoughts we hold about people, especially in moments of conflict or difficulty, are just as important as the words we say to their face. If we constantly tell ourselves they never listen or they don't care, that story shapes how we interact with them. We approach them with frustration or resentment, and that energy influences the dynamic between us. But if we choose to think they might be having a tough time, or we're in this together, those thoughts shape how we show up. We approach the conversation with patience, understanding, and compassion, and the relationship becomes a space for resolution, growth, and connection. Words have the power to make or break relationships, but they also have the power to heal. A simple "I'm sorry" can mend a rift that has been growing for days, weeks, or even years. A heartfelt "I appreciate you" can rebuild trust that has been lost. The words we use when we're angry, hurt, or confused matter deeply. And when we choose words that reflect our deepest values, words that are rooted in empathy, love, and understanding, we pave the way for connection and healing. When you speak to someone with kindness, you are inviting them to be their best self in your presence. You are encouraging them to show up vulnerably, without fear of judgment. You are offering them the gift of safety, a place where they can be authentic and open. And when you speak to yourself with the same level of care and respect, you begin to extend that same grace to others. It creates a ripple effect that elevates every relationship you have, whether it's with a family member, a colleague, a friend, or a partner. At the end of the day, relationships are built on communication, on the words we say, the intention behind those words, and the way we choose to speak to others and ourselves. When we speak with love, empathy, and respect, we build bridges. When we speak with anger, judgment, or indifference, we build walls. And the key to creating meaningful, lasting connections lies in recognizing the power of our words and choosing to use them in a way that uplifts, strengthens, and nurtures the relationships that matter most to us.